Tereza. Thank you. I'm from Diplo, and I also have the pleasure to be the chair of Working Group D of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise on Cybersecurity, Culture and Skills. And it is exactly in the working group dedicated to cybersecurity, culture and skills that we also touch upon the educational aspects of cybersecurity. And I think most of us here realize kind of the importance of cyber education starting at a younger age, be it because we as adults who haven't had the luck to be born as digital natives kind of realize that there is some catching up to do, but also us as parents or aunts, uncles and grandparents, that we realize and observe what dangers there are online and that through education, some terrible things can be prevented. So how did it come about that we are talking here about the report, a study that we will be presenting to you shortly? The whole GFCE and especially the working group process is quite bottom up, in the sense that we as a working group have quite a lot of flexibility in which directions our work will unfold and what will be the research focus. And we decided, based on the inputs of members of this working group, to actually look into cyber education of young people. And then this project got quite some traction in the GFC community as a whole. We published a call for proposals, and there were quite a lot of very competitive submissions that answered to this call. And we have been very fortunate to be able to work with researchers from the University of Kent, which have who have submitted the best proposal and that the GFC appreciated most. I have to say that this was commissioned also with the support from Global Affairs Canada. Now, the purpose of today is very simple. Our researchers would like to present to you the research findings and also to use the report as a launch or an invitation to further debate on this issue and hopefully contribute to further sharing of experiences. Now, regarding the event modus operandi, so we will be together for approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes now, and we will start by actual presentation of the research findings. We will then proceed to panel discussions of excellent speakers who I will introduce a little bit later. Now, this event will be as interactive as we make it, so feel free to shape the way in which the discussion will unfold. For that, and if I may ask anybody who is not muted to mute themselves, thank you. And for that, you can interact with us through various ways. Either you can use the chat or you can use the raise hand function, and we will definitely give you the space to contribute. So I would like to now actually start with the actual report presentations, and I would like to invite Shujun Li, who is the author of the report, and he works at the Institute of Cybersecurity for Society at the University of Kent. Shujun, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. So I need to say that I'm representing the team. So we have I think, except one, the whole team is here. So I would let my team members to introduce themselves briefly, and then I will be the last one. Then I will start the presentation. Yeah. So I think Virginia, you can probably start first.
Hello, I am Virginia Franqueira. I am a lecturer in cybersecurity of the School of Computing, University of Kent, and yeah, so I'm a team member. Thank you.
I'm Vince Miller. I'm a reader in Sociology and Cultural Studies at the University of Kent in the School for Social Policy, Sociology and Social Research.
My name is CSA Waldock. I'm a research assistant at the School of Computing and a PhD student at the School for Sociology, Social Policy and Social Research at the University of Kent.
Okay, so it's me. So I'm Shujun Li. So I'm a professor of cybersecurity at the University of Kent, and so I will be the presenter of the results. And I also want to mention that we also have another research assistant, Ahima Bela Saklem, so who unfortunately had a conflict meeting elsewhere, so she couldn't make a last-minute arrangement to change it. And she was the lead author of the systematic literature review. I will mention a bit later on in my presentation. Let me share my screen so that you will see the slides. Okay, can you let me know if you can see the slides properly?
It's loading, Shujun. I'm sure it's a question of a few seconds.
Okay, so because I have the presenter view, and let me see. It's already being shared. It's still loading. Let's stop sharing and share again. Probably need to let me deprecate rather than extend. Share again. This one. Can you see it now?
Yes, I can confirm we can see it
Okay.
now. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Okay, so and thanks Tereza again. So for the introduction and giving us the chance to present our results. And as you all know, so this project is about the pre-university cybersecurity education, and we want to look into actually how to develop cyber skills, amongst children and young people. And so the work basically is about looking at what is currently happening, and rather than creating new things, but of course we create a new understanding. So, and you also see the names of the team, and so the first thing I want to give a bit sort of information about the project itself. So basically it started last summer, it is still ongoing, and currently it's mostly about finalizing and polishing the final reports we are going to release in a few weeks' time. And so the work is contracted by GFCE and conducted by by colleagues and myself at the University of Kent. And it actually was and has been supported by many organizations and people and individuals. And I listed some of them on the screen. And I have to say that this is a genuine piece of true teamwork, and we really appreciate all the help. And so without the help, we definitely can't make it happen. And regarding how we did it, so the methodology, and we started with a systematic literature review, so SLR, and so the idea is to capture what is in the research literature so that we understand the research side of things. And then we moved on to look at, so basically desk research based on publicly available online resources mostly. And so for instance, websites of relevant organizations, and Google searches for proper keywords, and also a lot of ad hoc information based on our personal knowledge, what we received from helpers, and also what we collected or see from research literature. So then we put them all together and to try to get a better understanding of the current status and the problems, and then we also make recommendations later. And the desk research is also enhanced by 21 semi-structured interviews with 24 interviewees. And the reason why the numbers do not match, because we have some interviews with more than one interviewees. And so those interviews they are really there to confirm the findings we get from research literature, from the desk research, and also to get additional experts' opinions, because some of them might not be that obvious from the public resources which is written. And so putting them all together, and we are able to basically to derive the key findings and propose some recommendations. And the focus, as you all know, GFCE is a global organization with membership from all continents, and clearly we are interested in looking at not just a single country, not even a single continent. So we do have quite a difficult decision to decide what countries to cover, because given the relatively short period of time, it's roughly half a year, and the real part is actually less than half a year. So we felt we need to have a smaller number of representative countries so we can actually study this topic properly and to get sensible results. So our decision after a lot of thinking and also checking availability of people and organizations and also discussing the GFCE, for instance, and we decided to cover 13 countries. It's actually not about decided, we decided to cover more, but sometimes it's about responses are not available and there are no people and they have to be there, for instance. So we ended up with 13 countries. We split them into 3 groups. And so one group is mostly kind of English-speaking countries or countries with English as one of the official languages. And the second group, and so those ones in the first group, of course, mostly are developed countries. And so for group 2, and we have mostly European countries and but non-English speaking. So they are mostly part of European Union, so which allows us to get how European Union is doing in this space. And for group 3, and as you can see, they are more international and also mostly non-English speaking, although South Africa, of course, also had English speaking as a main language. But generally speaking, and by using those countries, we are able to cover all the continents. Of course, we count North America and South America as a single one. And although this doesn't cover everything, but we found this is relatively reasonable sort of set up for the limited time we have. And for 11 out of the countries and of the 13 countries, we also had interviewees from those countries, so to allowing us to actually to consolidate and confirm our understanding. And for the UK, of course, we also have the 4 so-called countries within countries, or we call it nations in the report, nations of the UK. And for 3 of them also have interviewees. And so that is largely how we look at countries. And for each country, we looked at 5 we call the landscapes or perspectives. And so the first one is the stakeholder, meaning that about what are the parties and with the relevant interests and activities. And we looked at the policies, basically about what are the relevant policies for cybersecurity education pre-university. And we look at education itself, and it's about the education system, because sometimes we need to understand the education system to better understand what is going on. And then we looked at implementation. So these are mostly about the very concrete initiatives, the programs and actions. And of course, this is not going to be a complete list, but it's those more representative ones. And we saw and we were told about, conducted by those different stakeholders. And finally, we looked at social, economic, and cultural factors so that we can actually look at the different dimensionalities and how they are interacting with each other. And in addition to the countries, we also covered a number of international and multinational organizations active in this field. And so this is the list. I will not actually, repeat all of them. And so ITU and INESA and are particularly highlighted in this particular part. This is one of the chapter of the report is focusing on those organizations because the ITU has a global reach and has a lot of activities, and INESA basically has a particular active role in the European Union, and for others, including GFCE, and we had also some relatively brief coverage because their activities is not only on cyber or on safety. I mean, GFCE is, but others are not. But they have something relevant, so which are all covered in the report. And the final report, it looks like that, and as it currently stands. And this is actually the cover and the executive summary, which is 2 pages, and 1 page for key findings, and the other page for main recommendations. And so the report will be released in a few weeks, as I said earlier on. And the report itself is 1 document, and we also have a separate SAR documents, which is about the first step of our research. And that one is currently under review as a research paper. And so we will released the final report. And so the SR also informed our final report, particularly on the key findings and main recommendations. And so now let me move on to talk about these key findings and the main recommendations. And so we have 9 key findings. I will have 3 slides, and so that give you sort of really a bit more detail. So I don't have all of them on single slides. I have 3 on single slides for key findings. So the first one is about the 2 different approaches which we observed, and to embedding cybersecurity and online safety and contents in the curriculum. So one is basically about more as part of a more technological subjects, and with many different names, but they're all sort of technology or computing or ICT flavored. And the other one is to embed into more non-technological subjects, and often it's just not one, and different country also has different names and have different setup. And the second is about there are a number of interesting lags we observed, and particularly towards cybersecurity related career paths. So like there's a lack of practical cybersecurity skills taught, there's a lack of security mindset, and there's a lack of enough skill set coverage built in, and many of these would causing problem about readiness to take a cybersecurity career once they graduate. And the third one is about we observed a concern across the board regarding the lack of teacher training, and which actually leads to insufficient teacher skills. And also in addition, the teacher seems to be generally struggled with finding enough time to cover cybersecurity contents. And the next key finding is about this space is very colorful, and there's many different stakeholders in many different sectors are active, and they are often active for different parts or aspects of the whole landscape. And these activities often had a flavor of being very fragmented and often not quite come up together. So they are often do their thing and separately rather than working together. And there are also confusions and about who basically is really in charge and taking the main responsibility on a particular matter. And the next key finding is related to economics, and we did observe that economics seems to play a role in this particular pre-university cybersecurity education. And so for instance, for some countries, and often teaching the more traditional subjects, which are more about survival and often actually take a higher priority, so then cybersecurity became a secondary thing and often not got covered or not got covered enough. And so next key finding is about different levels, and actually we identified 5 different levels of development and maturity of pre-university cybersecurity education in different countries. And I have a separate slides on this, but I thought this is a little bit more detailed. I will leave it until later if there's any questions or if the panel discussion touch that point. But this is also quite interesting observation about the different ways of doing things. And so the next key finding is about curriculum design, and we noticed that mostly it's top down. It's basically in many countries the Department of Education or Ministry of Education, and somehow decide how to do it, and then that is done that way. And for extracurriculum is often also designed by some organizations and more sort of defined that way, and then implemented, and schools and pupils will be just receiving it. And so the next key finding is about although there, for many countries, there are national curriculum, and either about cybersecurity, normally has some coverage of cybersecurity. And even if there is such a curriculum in place, and often teachers and schools actually have a lot of controls. They basically can decide what to do and how to do it. And that often actually has causing a problem about a lack of direction, right? Because when they have the freedom and what really they should do and for what purpose and for to prepare pupils for what kind of career, and sometimes there is a lack of direction. And the last key finding and is about sort of general perceived general lack of interest and awareness among children, and so particularly as a potential career path. And related to that, there's also observed a problem about the lack of diversity, and about the students who are taking up particularly optional courses and training events, meaning that maybe some group of pupils are not actually taking as much as other groups. So that can be a problem by itself. So these are the key findings we summarized, and in the final report, we have a whole chapter 7. We'll be giving a bit more details than what I show on these slides, and so please stay tuned so that you can read a bit more in the report about that level of details. Now I move on to main recommendations. For main recommendations, so we decided to basically to both say what the recommendations, what are stakeholders the recommendations is proposed for. This is what actually underscore and at the beginning. So and then actually we talk about the actual proposed recommendation. And we have 8 recommendations, and so the first one is mostly looking at the government bodies in different countries managing the actual educational affairs. And so we suggest that setting up a national or regional, depending on how the country is organized, because some country does not organize things at the national level, and they have regional, either at the state level or the provincial level, or maybe other setup. But setting up such a body at that level and with overall responsibility and would help to coordinate and avoid fragmentation. And the second recommendation is for basically all stakeholders with broader interest. And we felt that strengthening collaborations and communications between the different sub-communities would help, again, avoid fragmentation and disjoint efforts. And of course, probably also help avoid wasting of resources and so on and so forth. And we also recommend that setting up a single community-wide body and covering all stages of cybersecurity education would helpful. So the all stage means that from pre-university all the way to higher education, and then also post higher education, because while on work there's also career development, right? So continuous lifelong learning. And all of these, if they can be covered by a body which actually allows the gap between the different stages to be covered, that would be very useful. The next recommendation, basically for organizations setting up curricula and qualification standards. This is often government bodies, but in some countries it's different. So the idea is really more about to embed these skills more widely, and currently it's still not enough, basically. And the next recommendation also for all stakeholders, and so the idea is we all need to basically do more to attract more young people to cybersecurity education, and particularly about these less covered and non-traditional groups, to make sure that the diversity and EDI matters are covered. And the next recommendation also for all stakeholders, and so that actually is about we need to really look at how to avoid only cover the technology-centric contents, and we need to look at how we can systematically cover more different aspects rather than just the the very hard technical part. And for this particular part, and our systematic literature review and pointing to 6 recommended aspects, and that can be used to guide this kind of systematic thinking. So that is about technological awareness, procedural awareness, data awareness, identity awareness, social cultural awareness, and consumer awareness. So they are actually all cover sort of different aspects, and as you can see that the different aspects should go to different subjects depending on how the education system and how the curriculum is designed. And for the next one, and is again for this organization setting and or participating in setting curricula or qualification standards. And we suggest that the design of a curriculum and qualification standards will benefit from a more bottom-up, meaning that a participatory approach, meaning that we really we benefit if actually the actual standard setting bodies work with schools, with pupils, with parents, so that, and with industry, of course, so that we really get what we really should cover, so that we see less gaps. The next,
I apologize to interrupt you, but if you could just maybe sketch the remaining.
Yeah, this is the last slide.
Yes, thank you.
So the next recommendation is about more research and innovation, and we highly recommend these need to be done. They should be done in a participatory manner as well, so that users working with the researchers and the innovation creators. And the last one is about the solution providers, and which we think more solutions and innovative solutions should be developed and encouraged, used, rewarded, adopted. And this should be cross-sectional, sectoral, and it should also be participatory and to engage with users. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Shujun, and apologies that I rushed.
No worries. I didn't watch my clock, so maybe I wasn't too slow.
There is certainly much more to uncover than we could do in the 20 minutes that we kind of implied on you. So thanks for respecting that, so that we can kind of give a chance also to our participants to decide what maybe are some of the recommendations and findings that deserve to dig deeper in. So at this stage, before we go to the panel, I do open the floor for anybody who would like to clarify anything with the authors from University of Kent. Feel free to take the opportunity by raising your hand. If not now, of course, we can get to it also later in the evening, event. I will just count to 5 to give you the chance. And it seems that we should go directly to the panel discussion. So feel free to, if anything comes up, to use the chat or just indicate to us in a different way. Now, we have put together quite an exciting panel. And what I would like all our panelists to elaborate on is what are some of the first reactions on the findings? Has anything surprised you? Has anything shocked you? Did you see some main problems, gaps in also the methodology, the selection of countries, and all of these aspects? That's one aspect that I would like to you to speak on. The second also, like, what next? Yes, what can we as the GFCE do? How can we take this discourse further? And for this part of the event, I have the pleasure to introduce, in no particular order, Professor Basie von Solms, who is the director of the Center for Cybersecurity at the University of Johannesburg. Welcome.
Thank you.
Shin Yi Lim, who is the Senior Assistant Director at the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. Hello to you as well.
Hi, hello.
Excellent. We have with us also Yasmine Azzouzi, who is the Cybersecurity Program Officer at the IITU, the International Telecommunications Union.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Yasmine. Fanny Rotino, also Project Officer at the IITU. Hello, Fanny.
Hi, everyone.
Excellent. And last but not least, Heather McLean, who is the Policy Advisor at Public Safety Canada.
Hi,
so
everyone.
welcome. Hello. And let me start with you, Professor Basie. How do you react to the report findings, please?
Thank you very much, Tereza, for inviting me to be part of this panel. Let me start off, and I know I've got very little time, so I'll speak fast. My congratulations to the team. I think it's a very important report, and it will definitely provide background to what is needed. About what is interesting to me, as you probably know, I am also the Associate Director of the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center in Oxford, and I'm specifically responsible for Dimension 3, which is all about cybersecurity awareness, cybersecurity education, etc., etc. And I must say it is very interesting to me, or actually not surprising, very sort of put in my mind at rest that over the last how many years, the results of a cybersecurity maturity review within countries, which reviews these 3 aspects, correlates extremely well with what is being said in the report. Specifically, there's a report quite recently by the Cybersecurity Capacity Center in Cape Town, which is one of the members of the conglomerate of cybersecurity centers of the Global Cybersecurity Capacity Center, looking at this type of topic within the SADC region, that's the Southern African Development Corporation, amongst a lot of African countries. And again, the idea is precisely the same, namely that governments are not doing enough. Kids and preschool, pre-university children are not getting the type of cybersecurity awareness specifically. So as a start-off point, before the other eminent panelists say something, I'm impressed. I'm very happy that there's a strong correlation with what has been found by other areas. And I really think that together, this will result in some action, although from my experience, that is maybe the most difficult part.
Thank you very much, Professor Basie. That was certainly useful. Going to you, Shin Yi, what do you see as next steps, and what in the report would you point out?
Yeah, hi. So I think the report actually shows that it is quite, I think every country, I mean, all of us here, all the countries stated here have very similar kind of like directions. You know, the direction is actually to attract more people, more people into the career and all that. And also, I think a lot of the interventions are really going beyond just directly to the students, right? There's also looking at, you know, other than really looking at the curriculum itself, I think people are also looking into educating the parents, because these are very important ecosystem partners and all that in talent building. So I think this is also quite aligned to some of the things that we have. And of course, I think for us, it's good that, you know, we hear from a lot of these countries to really understand more about what others are doing. And of course, like, you know, in terms of the resources and all that, how could we, you know, collaborate internationally, you know, between the different countries? How could we collaborate on this? Because I think this is where it's like cybersecurity is a sport, right? It's a team sport. And how do we also work in terms of the workforce development? I think this is some of the key things that I thought is quite aligned to what the report is quite aligned to what we're doing also. Yeah. And also, Idrissi, thanks for also inviting me to participate in this research. Yeah, for University of Kent and also the GFCE. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much for your contributions. Let me go now to the ITU, and I'll start with Yasmine. I mean, obviously, ITU is also quite active in this field, so please share more with us.
Thank you very much, Tereza. Hi, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be part of this panel and taking part into this interesting and timely discussion. So I'm a cybersecurity program officer, so I focus on inclusion and capacity development for women and youth in cybersecurity. And regarding the findings, I really like to focus on what has been identified as being a lack towards cybersecurity related career paths. The difficulty sort of in attracting children and young people to understand not only cybersecurity, but also pursue cybersecurity education. Not so much, you know, training them on online safety awareness. I'll let my colleague Fanny develop on that. And I really think that the issue highlighted in the report of, you know, the perceived general lack of interest and awareness among children is still very much present in the sense that there's a lack of exposure to the cybersecurity field, a lack of understanding of its implications. And while we see that young people are increasingly being interested in being actors in the fourth industrial revolution, they really are attracted to the megatrends like virtual reality, robotics and whatnot, but they often don't realize that for, you know, successful digitalization, for the new digital space to be functional, it needs to be safe, it needs to be available, it needs to be secure. So cybersecurity is an inherent enabler of all this. So there needs to be this mentality shift. And I think the report has highlighted that, where cybersecurity is seen as not only a set of rules to be followed, so having a strong passwords, not opening suspicious links, etc., but rather seeing it as an inherent enabler to a digital future, and also a field that holds many, many opportunities for a different array of backgrounds. And I'd be happy to share more on that as the discussions continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yasmine. Indeed, it is about culture and skills, and that's why exactly our working group got into this topic with so much enthusiasm. Going to you, Fanny, you're also from the ITU, but your perspectives to complement what Yasmine has said.
Thank you very much, Tereza. And well, thank you also for having me and having us on the panel and having us contribute to the report, and congratulations. I believe it is a very, very important document because it highlights exactly the gaps and I think the recommendations, and I was very happy to see that they correlate fully with, let's say, our approach within ITU, in particular when we look at child online protection or online safety education. So as Yasmine has highlighted, we have a bit of different work streams within ITU that were covered by the research. So I am focusing on child online protection, online safety within ITU. I am the project and program officer at ITU on that. So we have really this focus. We have an initiative called the Child Online Protection Initiative that exists for more than 12 years now, and that focuses on developing the necessary frameworks, both at the policy level, legal level, but also regulatory level, work with all the relevant stakeholders, including industry, but also all the different ministries at the country level. So of course, ministries of ICTs, but also ministries of education, social welfare, and other relevant stakeholders at the country level, but also developing the capacity and supporting all stakeholders to work on skills development with children and end users, as we say. So I think what was very important for me to highlight is indeed the multi-stakeholder approach in order to effectively and efficiently support children and young people in learning digital skills and becoming digital citizens, basically. And there's different elements that I thought were very important in the recommendations. So I believe that the point highlighted that a dedicated agency or a dedicated working group at the country level should exist is something that we have always been advocating for. So in our programming work at the moment, we're focusing on developing strategies at the country level that would coordinate and ensure communication and cooperation at the country level between all the stakeholders, because we believe online safety is something that can only be addressed by including all relevant stakeholders, and this includes children and young people since the beginning in the developing, but also in the implementing and evaluating and monitoring of activities and frameworks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Fanny. That was useful, especially to stress that the children themselves are the stakeholders here in this debate. So going now to Heather, before we bring up the many questions that are already popping up in the chat. Heather, your reflections, please.
Yeah, I think that the report is a good first start. And first, I should say thank you for inviting me to participate in the panel. I really appreciate it. I think the report brings out a lot of good information and helps aggregate that information and get people thinking about the different challenges. When I think about countries like Canada, we have a slightly different challenge in the sense that our education is not a national program. It is the jurisdiction of our different provinces and territories. So we have to think about it in that context and how we can collaborate more to bring forward something that can work across the nation, to develop curricula and to offer more for students. Something else that jumped out for me when I was reading the report is, of course, we've done this just during COVID, and most of us have had experience with online learning and our students being taken out of the classrooms and going into online learning. So it'd be interesting, I think, as a next step to think if there's any way that has affected how how that's impacting our students and our teachers as well, because a lot of them are feeling overwhelmed and stressed. And then my final point would be is really, I think we need to do a lot more to focus on the parents and to help educate and inform them about cybersecurity, what it is, to demystify it, take the scariness out of it. That's not, guys in hoods all the time, and to really help them understand what the career opportunities are. And I'll just give a quick example of something that happened here where I am in Canada a few years ago. In a previous life, I was working for an organization called CyberMB, and we had developed a cybersecurity strategy for across the region, and my area was with skills. And we had a competition for what was Cyber Titan. It was a national competition. And one of the organizations in my area was going to hire 2 Cyber Titan students right out of high school. And these are really brilliant kids, and Cyber Titan is all about, learning cybersecurity skills. One student was selected, and this would have been a golden ticket for this kid. He could have gone to university or college anywhere. They were going to pay for it. It was a good paying job, good. His parents didn't understand cybersecurity and thought it was just a flash in the pan and that it wasn't going to be something that was long lived. And they encouraged him not to accept it. And I don't know where he is now. It's been a few years, but he ended up going to work in a restaurant as a cook. So this is a prime example where we have to really work to educate and inform parents that it's not this scary thing that's just a flash in the pan, that this is fundamental and foundational to our economies and to our national security.
Very insightful, Heather. Thank you very much also for bringing the quite concrete example. Now, I would first like to point out a few questions that arose in the chat. I would then like to give the opportunity to any co-authors of the report to address them in addition to what has already been happening in the chat, and also give the authors of our report the opportunity to react to any of the points from our panel. So just for those of you who maybe are just listening and not necessarily following the chat, we have had some really important aspects brought up. The first one was by Rodney Peterson, who actually brought it, yes, to a reality of these days, or when the pandemic started, and homeschooling. Now, he asks what are the challenges and opportunities in the sense of growth towards homeschooling for introducing cybersecurity careers for homeschooled children and preparing teachers. So that's one question. Shujun has answered it a little bit, but I will still like to invite you to elaborate on that later. Rick Harris, he asked what is the extent that cybersecurity addressed in university education. Here we will need to have an important methodological clarification because the report actually did not cover university level education, which Shujun has also explained later in the chat. And there has also been a question on whether the finding of a general lack of interest in cyber skills and cybersecurity careers in pre-university students apply to all 3 national groups. Very good. And then a question from Rick, who asks for more clarification on what are actually the cybersecurity skills that we are talking about, and what exactly is missing in the current target group. So these are the questions, and I have seen the reactions in the chat, and I encourage everybody to go through them. But now an opportunity to any co-author of the report to jump in and elaborate more. And I will not call you out. I don't know if it should be you, Shujun. Yes.
Okay, so regarding the exact cybersecurity skills, of course, because we looked a lot into the national curriculum and qualification standards and so on and so forth. So they are often very precise about what they are covering, like cloud computing, right, passwords and the privacy, and so on and so forth. If you really want to get a really map of what each country is covering, I think we probably can. That probably will be a bit fragmented and a little bit arbitrary, I think, from curriculum to curriculum. And we in the report we actually had referred to a particular project called the Cyber Body of Knowledge. So Cyber Body of Knowledge, if anyone here actually from UK will know it better, is project funded by National Cybersecurity Center in the UK. So the idea is to use it to get a better understanding of what are the different areas in cybersecurity which are important. And that is not necessarily the complete body of knowledge, but it's probably a better way to look at where are probably missing or covered less. So my general feeling is social technical aspects of cybersecurity in general are covered relatively less, except online safety. Because online safety has quite a different flavor of what really is for, because it's for you not to do this, not do that, right? Pay attention to this. But social technical aspect of cybersecurity is much more than that, like usability of systems, human behavior in terms of privacy, not necessarily about sharing data directly, so you should not share data, because sometimes sharing data is needed and necessary, right? And so on and so forth. So there are complicated things going on. And yeah, in general, it's quite complicated landscape in general. And yeah, I hope others probably can.
Yeah, I mean, I can elaborate a little bit on Rick's question as well, Shujun. I did mention it in the chat here, but I mean, one of the interesting findings that came across more in the UK, but also had been mentioned by one or two interviewees in Australia, was a bit of a complaint about the emphasis within computing education on computational thinking, and how, in a way, spending so much time doing computational thinking and not more technical things, and particularly the creation of what is sometimes referred to as a security mindset, and is referred to in the report as a security mindset, meant that those people that we talked to in this area felt that graduates were not graduating with that security mindset, right? And the technical skills that would allow them to pursue cybersecurity careers. So that was one thing. The other thing I would also point to in more detail in our strategic literature review, we do actually provide a sort of a set of awarenesses, we call them, which was mentioned in the report as well, about what's general broad categories of cybersecurity education could be followed, right? So identity awareness, social cultural awareness, because I think one thing that we did find is that often some regions or countries were quite good on the technical bits. Some people, some had more of a emphasis on the social, cultural, ethical awareness side of things. Some bodies emphasized the notion of being data aware and that kind of thing. But it is very rare that all of these things were kind of emphasized in a way. And I think there is a bit of uncertainty as to what to follow. So one thing that we tried to do in the SLR is to sort of set out, well, these are the topics that you could look at and start to build a curriculum around in a way.
Thank you very much, Vincent, for that. I can see Fanny's hand is up. I would like to give you the opportunity now, as I feel you want to chip in on the recent discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, indeed. I just wanted actually to emphasize a bit on the different things that were just mentioned. So I think one element that for us is very important is the shift where we speak about online safety skills and education and awareness, is to move away from the simple angle of protection, considering children, again, focusing more on children, but also young people, as victims of potential harm online, or cybersecurity threats, to speak in that language, but really more also adding a perspective of how can we ensure that the environment and the skills are provided so that children and young people can fully benefit from the opportunities that the online environment offers. So really with this very positive angle, and this is of course something that we ensure by involving them since the beginning, because their vision is a lot more positive, let's say, on the things than probably ours when we look at safety and potential harm and risk that they can encounter online. So for instance, we always have, and we embed our skills trainings on online safety in a child rights-based approach. So really looking what are children's rights and how can they be exercised and how can they be lived basically in the online environment. And this includes, as I mentioned earlier, different angles on online safety. So for instance, only today we're launching a new initiative that is called POP, Protection Through Empowerment, through Online Participation. And it's something that we are launching together with children and young people. It's an initiative to understand how children use the online environment to stay safer, even in the offline world. So, I mean, I think there are so many different, this is just an example to share that there's so many different layers around cybersecurity awareness, skills, and safety. And only by involving children and having a very comprehensive view on the topic, I think it can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, Fanny, Yasmine, your hand is up as well.
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to also address the question on the cybersecurity skills that are missing in target group. And I think that, this has to start, of course, before university with the development of skills that are both digital, but also soft, transferable skills, along with, of course, the proper orientation. So two main elements. Something that was identified in the findings of the report is the lack of a security mindset, as was mentioned, towards a cybersecurity related career path. And the solution should be not to focus so much on the tools or on the knowledge, which are, of course, fast changing, and in any case, too advanced for the target group we're looking at, but rather the development of transferable digital and soft skills that are needed at pre-university level, beyond, of course, computational thinking, as was mentioned earlier, and also beyond traditional tools of education. So thinking of games, cybersecurity camp experience, simulations, scenario-based games, hackathons, all this in the goal of course, demystifying cybersecurity, as was mentioned, through interactive learning, and also ways to teach transferable skills that are useful for cybersecurity, such as critical thinking, systems thinking, threat analysis, risk management. All of these can be gamified in a way which helps create then a skill set that later on is easily applicable once the youth go deeper, of course, into their cybersecurity studies or careers at a later stage. And the second thing that I mentioned is orientation. And I think orientation in high school is still lacking a lot guidance on the jobs of the future, the jobs in digital, jobs in cyber, and those also on the interdisciplinarity of the backgrounds that are needed. So children and youth still need to be given this exposure to the opportunities of digital and cyber. They need to be presented with the opportunities, of course, also for study mobility, for on-site visits, for example. In the same way as we are, as children, were taken to visit the firefighters, why not have children today go see the work of incident response teams and try to have this sort of out of the box thinking for learning on the long run.
No, thank you, Yasmine. Absolutely. Yes, more creative way of learning should be considered. Now, I'm not surprised that my colleague Abdul Hakim Ayola has posed some quite provocative questions in the chat. So let me sum for you quickly. Now, we have been talking about lack of interest. Heather has brought a clear example of maybe lack of understanding, interest in cybersecurity careers. Can it be that we are not seeing the exciting possibilities of the profession? Because, maybe if we talk about cybersecurity as a career, it sounds boring, while it doesn't have to be. His second question is, whether young ones are actually really worried about privacy and security, or is it our presumption that it's the case? He raised the question of income streams, very important indeed. And lastly, about kind of the new arrangement we are seeing more and more often of independent contractor opportunities in the era of the Great Resignation. These are some very, very important questions. I know there were some reactions in the chat to that. I would stop here before going to further questions, because these are quite some provocative questions deserving maybe provocative answers. I'm throwing it to Heather.
Yeah, in terms of the knowledge of children and so on. I think in some cases, the way it's portrayed, we make it scary, right? And we make it complicated. So I think by, again, taking that information about the careers and the opportunities and demystifying and showing people who actually do the work. I like the idea of going into a security operations center and for kids to see and to, hear what we've done. We've created under Cyber MB, when I was there, we created superheroes that are showing kids through graphic novels how to be superheroes in cybersecurity. So I think we can do that. I think it's demystifying it, making it more interesting, showing the variety of jobs that are available, and also helping people understand that there's roles for people who may not be technically, they don't want to be coding, but there are roles in cybersecurity. We need criminologists, we need sociologists, we need psychologists, we need teachers. And that's the other big piece too, is we need to get more teachers skilled in it. So I think that there's lots of opportunity if we demystify, and absolutely with the Great Resignation there, we're seeing people leaving the workforce in droves. Some people are upskilling and reskilling. So I think we have to step back and look at those and better promote cybersecurity as a career option and talk about the different types of jobs, that you're not just sitting in a dark room all day in front of a computer for hours and hours and hours. And I think that's the perception that many have.
Thank you very much, Heather, for this comment, also for bringing up again the role of teachers. As we have heard from Shujun, teachers really kind of influence and impact the way that cybersecurity skills are taught at their schools, but these teachers need to be at the top of the game as well. Yeah, so it's a kind of, the issue is it's running a little bit in circle. Shin Yi, please, over to you.
Yeah, so I think on this, I think on our side, actually, what we did was that there are different levels of educating about cybersecurity. So we have came up with this thing called Actually Cyber Odyssey. It's like, to them, it's a journey, bring them along a journey. So we first start off with exciting them. The first stage is excite, where we provide those without cybersecurity knowledge and those who have not heard of cybersecurity. It could range from topics like just how do you protect your password, and also assembly talks, career talk, visits to companies like what you mentioned just now, the learning journeys and all that, to demystify all this at the first stage, right? Then after that, we also work with our Ministry of Education to insert some of this cybersecurity element. We provide resources, educate them, and also we insert it into some of this the generic ICT foundational training, provide some of this, insert cybersecurity into this. And along the way, we will go into explore stage for them. The second stage, explore, where they get to learn. We provide boot camps. Boot camps, a short training for them to learn, to have a bit of foundational, fundamental cybersecurity concepts. And for those who are really more interested in that, we keep them, we sustain their interest to an experience stage, when we provide them with more deep learning in cybersecurity. And we also have come up with this thing called Olympians, actually Cyber Olympians, to identify more of those and keep those who are interested in cybersecurity, those who have been quite skillful in CTFs and all that, in competitions and all that, and keep them engaged. So I think in this case, this is really to ensure that we engage people with different levels of cybersecurity levels, interests, or even skills. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Yini, for that. Professor Basie, over to you, please.
Tereza, just a very quick comment here. I think from my experience is we must make a big difference between first world countries and developing countries. In developing countries, the whole aspect of cybersecurity awareness at the moment is much, much more important than that of creating programming skills or other cybersecurity related education. That is, of course, important. But kids in developing countries, in Africa specifically, they are just given cell phones. That's the way of operating. And in a place like Africa, many of the parents did not go through a desktop revolution. So they've got no clue about security and risks. So they just give the phone to the child, and they are not in a position, because they've never been there themselves, to make these students aware. So the buck goes back to the school environment. And in this area, I'm very confident that the emphasis on cybersecurity awareness, making them aware of the risks, making them aware of their own privacy, making them aware of reacting in chat rooms to unsavory things, that's, from my side, the most important at the moment. Of course, I'm an academic. I teach computer science. I would love to have computer science more concentrated, offered at primary school. But I think that's a nice to have in my environment and in the African environment. The important thing now is awareness, awareness, awareness.
And Basie, I'm so glad that you brought the developed countries kind of notion to the discussion, because it's very, very important. It also kind of will resonate with the question asked in the chat again by Abdul Hakim, you know, from the kind of African point of view. Very, very important, also an area where the GFCE realizes that that a lot must be done and a lot is in the pipeline and being planned. So thanks a lot for that. Fanny, I have not forgotten you, but I will get back to you. Just being a little bit conscious about time, I would now like to stay on this developed dimension and quickly give the opportunity to Shujun or other co-authors to elaborate on this notion.
Yeah, I was about to write something in the chat. So I think the developed and developing countries, I think the challenges are different. I, however, think that the developing country actually has more opportunities, looking at more innovative ways of educating both parents and children, because you don't really have a lot of money, or you don't really have people who know more about digital things. They need to think about something else, right? You can use games. Could it be physical game? Doesn't need to be a digital game, because the thing is about putting them into the mindset. We talk about mindset competition thinking. All these things do not have to be taught on computers, because, and actually one of our PhD students actually currently designing a board game, actually, and for families to play when they have free time, then they can learn those things while playing the the paper cards, right? That is, so there are, I think, I'm actually quite interested in general. I think so Kent, next step we will be really looking at how to really do innovation and research really for people who are less, with less resources available to them, right? Developing country is one, but in developing countries still have more vulnerable group who are probably also quite struggle with these kind of things.
Thank you very much, Shujun, for that and further explanations. Now going to you, Fanny, please apologize, I let you wait a bit.
No problem at all. No, actually, my points were directly linked also to the developing country and developing world. So I fully agree with with previous speakers, and this is why, for instance, our global programming is focusing on LDC, so least developed countries, developing countries, and small island developing states, because this is where we also see the lack of awareness. But it's not only, I think, in Africa as a continent or in African countries, it's globally we can see that. And we see also a tendency, recent statistics, the ITU statistics have shown that young people and children are connecting through mobile first, without any awareness or skills trainings ahead of that. They are connecting at much younger ages, and this is also throughout the world, and now due to COVID also often unsupervised for the first time. So of course this exposes them a lot more to risks and potential harm. And in terms of the different tools that can be used, I fully agree with Shujun's last examples, and this is why, for instance, we have a mascot at ITU, the Sango phone. It's a mascot that was developed by children. It's an online safety support icon, I would say, providing recommendations and tips to children, both online but also offline, in the sense that we have a comic book, we have an activities book also that can be done at the school context, specifically for countries where children will not have access necessarily automatically or from their home to the digital world. We have play cards as well that can be printed. So there's these kind of tools that are already there for younger children, developed with children, and that I think are very important for these areas. And I really like the term of demystifying that was mentioned also earlier. And I think, yeah, we always have to have those two angles, the technical side, but really the comprehensive approach of something that is rights-based, that is linked to critical thinking and to empowerment. And with that, I think young people and children will also see the benefits and the interesting sides of cybersecurity career path, but having, supporting them to access it in the first place.
Thank you, Fanny. Indeed, and demystifying might be one of the keywords also coming up from this discussion. I am aware of the time. We don't have much left, so we will not be able to go too much, again, another round to the questions in the chat, but I do want to draw everybody's attention to the chat, because quite good, again, provocative questions were brought up either by Rick on hacker culture and the fact whether we are actually not creating conditions for more cybercrime. A great input from Martin Koyabe from the GFC on the gamification on cybersecurity. So please refer to the chat to learn more about how others have reacted. And I would like to use the remaining minutes that we have left in a little bit of kind of sharing with you what are the next steps. So the full report will be available to the whole community of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise and obviously beyond in about 2 weeks' time. So we will keep you up to date, and you will receive the full copy that hopefully you can use further for your work. I can also promise you that that we will stick to this topic quite prominently at Working Group D on cybersecurity culture and skills of the Global Forum on Cyber Expertise. So if you are members of partners of the GFC family and you're not in our working group and these topics are passionate for you, please do join us and help us shape this discussion further. I would like to thank all of our panelists. I would like to, of course, thank the authors of the report. We know this was a big thing to swallow and quite a demanding process. So your work will definitely have some kind of useful follow-ups. Yes, it's not meant as an academic report to be in the drawer. That's why also the recommendations are included. Thank you to the GFC Secretariat for helping to bring us together and facilitating this discussion. Please keep in touch and have a good rest of the day. Thank you for staying until the end. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Thanks.